Thank you. This next session highlights the threats posed by surveillance and espionage technologies, particularly Pegasus spyware, against activists and human rights defenders. Many governments and repressive regimes increased their use of Pegasus spyware against activists, journalists, and other opponents. The speakers will address many aspects, starting with a review of the sides that have worked extensively this past year on developing Pegasus spyware and its impact on self-censorship and limiting digital rights. For this session, we are joined by Raed Dabasi, Ala Mahajna, Luis Fernando Garcia, and Monashtaya.
Hey everybody, how are you? This is Monashtaya. I'm the advocacy advisor for Hamla, the Arab Center for the Advancement of Social Media, and I'll be replacing my colleague Mariam Barouthi, who was supposed to facilitate this session as she doesn't feel good. But yeah, I'm here today to speak with our guest speakers about like a very interesting topic, which is the use of surveillance technologies against activists and human rights defenders. This session highlights the threats posed by surveillance technologies, particularly Pegasus spyware, against activists, human rights defenders, and others. Many governments and repressive regimes around the world increased their use of Pegasus spyware against activists, political opponents, journalists, and others. Speakers here with me in this session will address many aspects, starting with a review of the sites that have worked extensively this past year on developing Pegasus spyware and its impact on self-censorship and limiting digital rights. I'm here with the three brilliant speakers who will be joining us for the next 55 minutes. Let me start introducing them. I'll start with Raed. Raed is an information security engineer. He works with Amnesty Tech Security Lab as a technologist, where he carries out technological investigation into cyber attacks against civil society and particularly unlawful targeted surveillance. Ala Mahajna is a lawyer based in Jerusalem, specializing in the field of human rights, working on land and house issues in the Area C, in the occupied West Bank and Jerusalem. He is following up on many cases of victims of hacking by the Israeli company NSO and was the first to file a judicial procedure to hold companies directly responsible for the breaches that occurred and the violation of the right to privacy. Luis Fernando, he's the executive director and the co-founder of R3D, Red and Defense, a digital rights organization based in Mexico. He has a law degree from the University of apologies, I can't read its name, but it's in Mexico, and has master's studies in international human rights law at London University in London. I'll start. Like, we have this session is supposed to be very interactive, so we will have like a bunch of questions for each of our brilliant speakers, and I want to start with you, Raed. Can you please tell us a little bit about the NSO Pegasus project that Amnesty International, among other organizations, are leading, main goals, when it started, and what have you achieved so far?
Hi everyone, and thank you for the invitation, and thank you, Mona, for the presentation. So, as you said, at Amnesty International, we carried, like last July, we did this publication about the extensive use of the Pegasus spyware. It was a global investigation into the abuses of NSO Group's Pegasus. It was coordinated by Forbidden Stories, with the participation of 80 journalists from 17 media organizations, and Amnesty International was actually the technical partner into this project. So what's the Pegasus project and how it happened? So basically, this project is was based on a leak that was received by Amnesty and Forbidden Story of around 50,000 phone numbers of potential targets and allegedly targets of NSO Group's Pegasus. So the journalists coordinated like the contacts with the potential victims, and we at the security lab did an analysis, a forensic analysis of the phones of those who were potentially targeted. So this investigation led to the results. To results showing that more than 80% of the iPhones that we analyzed were showing traces of Pegasus, actually, which were concordant with the information that we had in the leak. So this is actually a project that highlights the abuses of NSO Group's Pegasus, but this comes actually after many other projects that preceded it, that were led by Amnesty International and other organizations like Citizen Lab and Frontline Defenders and Access Now, who work on the same subject. This Pegasus project had actually a significant impact and continues to have a significant impact, because during like the publication of the many articles that followed the revelations, we at our level at Amnesty Tech Security Lab, we published like our forensic methodology and published also the indicators of compromise that we use to identify the traces of Pegasus on the phones that we analyzed. One might ask, why did we do this? And there are many reasons behind that. And I want just to highlight some of them and the main ones, which are we want to share the knowledge, and we want to enable other organizations actually to be able to do the same work that we do. And by actually demystifying like this the subject of targeted surveillance and this industry of surveillance, that's really one of its main characteristics is secrecy. But actually, by combining the efforts of technologists and human rights researchers, we were able to carry out like this novel type of research and uncover like the abuses of the use of this targeted surveillance technology. I just want to stress that the Pegasus project was heavily covered in the media and all, but actually we did also previous researches on which like our methodology relied during that project, which actually showed that one of the main categories of people who are targeted using these state-sponsored attacks and this military-grade technology are actually human rights defenders and activists. And we revealed, like we back in 2018 at Amnesty Security Lab, we revealed the targeting of one of our staff members using Pegasus. Then we revealed another case of another human rights defender in Morocco, Mati Monjib. Then another case of a journalist in Morocco, Omar Radi, who's now in jail. And after that, like many other cases followed, because we, us and other organizations, like were more open into investigating this and into sharing the knowledge on how to do this. And one of the main publications around the Pegasus project was actually our open source tool that we published called MVT, Mobile Verification Toolkit, which is used now, which enables other researchers like us to investigate like these cases, and it's an open source piece of software that also other researchers can contribute to enforcing and contribute also to develop and maintain and all of that. So yeah, I'll stop here because yeah, I can go on for longer about this.
Thanks, Raed, for this inclusive introduction. Like, it's just a start. We will dive more and we'll discuss more about the Pegasus project that you are, like Amnesty International, among other organizations, are working on. Now, I'll move closer to the Palestinian context, because we are aware that, like, in the Palestinian context, we are aware that Palestinians are being exposed to mass surveillance as well as spywares and malwares, such as NSO, like among other also surveillance technologies. And Ala, you personally have followed up on many cases of victims of hacking by the Israeli company NSO, and you was the first to file a judicial procedure to hold companies directly responsible for that, basically for the breaches of the right or for the violation of the right to privacy. And therefore, I would like to ask you if you can please tell us more about your experience in this, and was it fruitful to take them to court, or you have other experience? Ala, you are muted, just if you can unmute yourself.
اوكي. مرحبا وشكرا منى على التقديم، وشكرا رائد، وجود سي يو لويز. بحب انوه منى يعني انه القضيه الاولى هي كانت بالشراكه طبعا مع منظمه R3D، واللي هو طبعا لويز هو مديرها. هذا كان نتاج عمل مشترك، يعني المنظمة اللي بيديرها لويز هي كمان بتمثل الضحايا المكسيكيين اللي تعرضوا للاختراق من خلال هواتفهم النقالة عن طريق تقنية بيغاسوس. بالتعاون طبعا مع الجمعية اللي بتمثلهن استطعنا تقديم دعوة قضائية الأولى من نوعها طبعا داخل القضاء الإسرائيلي، يعني من خلال 5 مدعين، 5 ضحايا مكسيكيين طبعا، جميعهم من يعني المجتمع المدني، إما محامون أو نشطاء في حقوق الإنسان أو صحفيين وأيضا أكاديميين. والادعاء المركزي الذي كان طبعا من خلال الدعاوى هو أنه من خلال التعقب طبعا وراء الهواتف النقالة طبعا تم خرق الحق في الخصوصية بغير حق طبعا بطريقة غير شرعية، ولذلك نحن طالبنا من المحكمة أن تصدر أوامر لمنع هذه الشركة من الاستمرار بتعقب طبعا الضحايا أنفسهم، وأيضا عدم استعمال هذه التقنية أو بيعها أو الاستمرار في إعطاء الدعم التقني للحكومة المكسيكية، على أساس أنه أثبت طبعا تورطها في الإخلال في الحقوق الأساسية، الحقوق الإنسان الأساسية. الآن طبعا التجربة، يعني أنا كما ذكرت يعني أترافع بمواضيع حقوق الإنسان منذ سنوات عديدة، وبالأخص بقضايا الفلسطينيين أمام الاحتلال الإسرائيلي في مناطق الضفة الغربية وشرقي القدس أيضا. فأنا يعني إنه من هذا الموقف يعني معتاد على هذا الموقف أن أقوم بتقديم قضايا ضد أجسام قوية أو ضد الدولة ذاتها، طبعا دولة الاحتلال. ولكن ما شاهدناه في هذه القضية هو كان مميز إلى حد خاص، وبرأيي هو تجاوز الصعوبة العادية التي نواجهها في قضايا الحقوق الإنسان المرفوعة ضد الدولة التي طبعا تقوم بمثل هذه الخروقات. ثبت أن هذه الشركات هي طبعا شركات قوية جدا من حيث الموارد والمصادر، وبالإضافة لذلك هي جزء لا يتجزأ أيضا من المنظومة أو المؤسسة العسكرية أو الأمنية الإسرائيلية، وبصفتها هذه هي تحظى بالدعم الكامل من الدولة ومؤسساتها. المثير أيضا كان تعامل المحاكم الإسرائيلية مع مثل هذه القضايا، طبعا يعني منذ البداية، ولويز يمكن أن يوافقني الرأي أيضا، كان واضحا لنا صعوبة مثل هذه القضايا، وخاصة أننا نتحدث عن مواضيع جديدة جدا لا يوجد لها سوابق ولا في أي دولة في العالم ولا في حتى في محاكم طبعا اللي هي محافل دولية. هذه القضية كانت الأولى من نوعها، فلذلك يعني توقعنا صعوبات، وتوقعنا طبعا رد عنيف من قبل هذه الشركات طبعا. بالإضافة إلى ذلك طبعا القانون، يعني بغض النظر إذا كان القانون الإسرائيلي في هذه الحالة أو القانون في دول مختلفة أخرى، ما زال متخلف عن التطورات التكنولوجية التي حدثت في العقدين الأخيرين أو في العقد الأخير على وجه الخصوص. فالوسائل القانونية التي نستعملها في مثل هذه القضايا هي وسائل قديمة، ووسائل تم طبعا وضعها من خلال قوانين من قبل عشرات السنوات. فبالتالي عندما وضعت هذه القوانين وعندما أتيحت هذه الوسائل، هي لم تكن معدة للتعامل مع مثل هذه الوضعية التي نتعامل معها اليوم. فبالتالي يعني إذا أخذنا الوضعية أو الوضع القانوني في إسرائيل، لا يوجد أي منع يمنع هذه الشركة من أن تقوم في بيع هذه التقنية لدول مختلفة أو استعمالها داخل إسرائيل. لا يوجد قانون يجرم هذا الاستعمال، وأكثر خطورة لا يوجد قانون ينظم هذا الاستعمال. فبالتالي يعني أنت تتعامل مع مؤسسة قوية يوجد لها موارد كبيرة جدا، ويوجد لها دعم سياسي ودعم أمني، وهي طبعا غير يعني عملها غير منتظم بأي قانون وأي إجراءات وأي رقابة من أي جهة أخرى. فبالتالي عندما أحضرنا هذه القضايا كان الهدف طبعا أحد الأهداف الأساسية هو إثارة هذا الموضوع المهم. يعني أنا أذكر عندما تقدمنا بالقضايا عام 2018 عدد المنشورات التي تعلقت بشركة الNSO وموضوع الاختراق عن طريق البيغاسوس كان قليل جدا أو محدود، وأغلبها كان يتعلق بالحالة أو الخروقات التي حدثت في المكسيك. بعد تقديم القضية يعني نشهد منذ شهر 8 أغسطس 2018 حتى اليوم يعني ارتفاع كبير أو مأهول جدا بعدد الاهتمام أو بعدد المنشورات أو بعدد المقالات التي تم كتب، أو عن طريق طبعا الأبحاث أو عن طريق التقارير التي نشرتها المؤسسات العديدة مثل سيتيزن لاب وأيضا أمنستي كما ذكر رائد. ف يعني التجربة ما زالت مستمرة هنا، التجربة لم تنتهي للأسف. وهي الموضوع يعني ممكن أشارك المشتركين معنا فيه، إنه المحكمة وضعت منذ البداية أمر منع نشر وإغلاق، يعني جاج أوردر ما يسمى. ويعني هذا الأمر هي تمنعني ذكر أين وصلت هذه القضايا وأين نحن موجودون اليوم. فبالتالي يعني يا ريت كنت بقدر أشارك من بعض المعلومات وأشارك طبعا المشاهدين أو المستمعين معنا إنه بيصير تقدم مثل هذه القضايا، وخاصة أنها القضية الأولى التي تم رفعها في أمام القضاء الإسرائيلي. طبعا بعد ذلك لاحقها قضايا عديدة تم رفعها بالأساس في الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية عن طريق شركات كبيرة مثل أبل ومثل طبعا شركة فيسبوك ميتا. بالنسبة للسؤال was it fruitful، يعني بتعلق منى كيف بتعرفي موضوع هل كان الأمر مجديا. عندما نتعامل مع قضايا حقوق الإنسان يوجد عدة اعتبارات نتناولها ونتعامل معها غير وهي مختلفة عن القضايا العادية. يعني احنا نتحدث عن قضايا يوجد فيها الكثير من الاعتبارات ويوجد فيها الكثير من المعوقات، وبالأساس كما ذكرت هنا يوجد فرق كبير وشاسع، بون شاسع ما بين القانون وما بين الواقع التكنولوجي الذي وصلنا له اليوم. فبالتالي أنت تحاولين تقريب هذه أو تقليص هذه الثغرة من خلال الوسائل القانونية الموجودة. إذا أخذنا مثلا معيار الأويرنس، معيار طبعا الوعي مقابل هذه الشركات، يعني بعتقد نجحنا نجاحا باهرا. اليوم يعني لا يوجد أحد لم يسمع عن شركة NSO وجرائمها التي ترتكبها في جميع أنحاء العالم. لا أحد لا يعرف ماذا تعني بيغاسوس. فبالتالي هذا وجه جدا يعني يمكن تلخيصه أننا نجحنا بالأمور. بالنسبة للجانب القانوني ما زلنا في خضم المعركة وما زلنا مستمرين، فلذلك يعني أنه بكير أو لسه في وقت تنقيم التجربة، ولكن مجرد انضمام شركات تكنولوجية كبيرة وتقديم دعاوى مشابهة وتستند على نفس الطعون القانونية التي رفعناها أمام المحاكم الإسرائيلية، باعتقادي هذا يعني إحراز تقدم. واليوم عندما يعني أنه أينما يحدث في أرجاء العالم يتم اختراق عن طريق بيغاسوس أو أي شركة أخرى، طبعا يوجد تغطية كاملة ومستمرة، ويوجد نداءات، وهذا أمر أهم جدا، يوجد نداءات لتحميل من المسؤولية وعدم الإفلات من العقاب، حيث يعني هذه الشركات كانت تتصرف وكأنها يعني في عالم لا يحكمه أي أعراف ولا أي قانون ولا أي إثكس ولا أي اعتبارات أخرى. هي تسعى بالأساس إلى الربح المادي، وهي تقوم بذلك من خلال طبعا خروقات جسيمة لحقوق الإنسان. اليوم طبعا الموضوع اختلف تماما، وهذه الشركات نفسها يعني تدعي، أنا لا أصدق طبعا هذه الادعاءات، أنها ستقوم باستخلاص العبر وأنها ستقوم بوضع رقابة داخلية، وبالإضافة إلى الرقابة التي سوف تقوم بها الدولة من أجل طبعا التخفيف أو من أجل منع هذه الخروقات من التكرار. طبعا يعني يمكن الاستمرار أكثر بذلك، يمكن بهذه المرحلة يعني أنه أكتفي بهذا القول.
Thank you, Ala. That's really comprehensive and fruitful. To be honest, I do agree with you. Like human rights work is accumulative work. Like you started, R3D started, and then Amnesty International, Citizen Lab, Frontline Defenders, and others are like working on that. So it's really accumulative work, and like every single effort is really like fruitful. So the question was, how is that? Because sometimes people said like, yeah, he took them to the court, but we didn't hear back. They prevented him from sharing anything. So it's really helpful to hear like your experience around that and what you think about the informative. Raising awareness is part of that, but also advocacy work is an important part. So it's definitely, of course, fruitful. Let me move to Mexico with you, Luis. We Palestinians know well that Israelis are testing surveillance technologies on us before selling that worldwide to profit from the occupation. So like that's happening for years now, and now it's more obvious and everyone is speaking about that. What does the surveillance landscape look like in Mexico in particular, but also you can give us like an overview on what's happening in the Latin America, and what is your experience work on that with your team in R3D?
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation. It's an honor for me to join you. I'm glad also that I'm wearing the official color shirt that we'll share right now in the call. And yes, I mean, Mexico has been one of the main markets for surveillance industry, in which Israeli companies have played a really important role. And obviously, these tools are marketed and they attempt to justify this industry by saying that these tools are necessary or important to combat terrorism and fight crime. In Mexico, since 2007, there's been hundreds of thousands of people killed, 100,000 people disappeared in violence that is related to drug gangs, but that it's not like this child's story about bad guys and good guys. In Mexico, the line that divides the government and organized crime is often non-existent or blurry. However, the anxiety that people have for the insecurity that we live in, the violence that happens in Mexico in an everyday basis, has been used to try to justify the acquisition of these very powerful tools without any transparency or accountability. And we have documented Israeli companies doing business in Mexico for more than 10 years, almost 15 years, selling surveillance equipment to Mexico. And we have been documenting how this has been done also through corruption, through, for example, a few years ago, really important amounts of money, of public money, were spent acquiring surveillance tools by the federal police. It was an agency that existed here in Mexico, and the head of the federal police, he later on he was awarded lots of money by the company that sold those Israeli surveillance equipment, and that person is right now facing drug trafficking charges in the U.S. No, so the head of the police is now facing drug charges in the U.S. and with that person, Israeli companies made business. No? And we have documented this on and on and on and on until the Pegasus story, no? In which, again, the line that NSO Group, that even the Israeli government uses, is that these tools, this industry, is to fight crime. However, what we found when we were investigating Pegasus around 5 years ago, and we published these cases, is that instead of using Pegasus to surveil perpetrators of human rights abuses, of people who commit corruption, they were used against human rights defenders, against journalists that were exposing that corruption, that were fighting against human rights abuses. And I will just give you a very clear example of how of the cases that we've encountered. In Mexico in 2017, there was, in 2014, sorry, there was a really big case in which 43 students were disappeared by security agents. It was a big scandal in Mexico. It created immense protests. There was a great outcry, national and international, about the case. And later on, we were able to know that instead of using these tools that were supposed to be used to fight crime, they were used against the families of the disappeared. They were used against the lawyers of the disappeared. They were even used against the international investigators that were invited to the country to collaborate with the investigation. So we see how these tools and this industry is totally unaccountable, is totally immoral, totally corrupt. They don't care about anything but making money and maybe even gain access to intelligence. And even when we have showed them abuse continues to happen. No, they don't care. They don't care even if we have documented abuse after there was a story in the front page of the New York Times. No, I mean, you cannot get bigger than that, and they just don't care, and they keep lines that they do internal investigations and that the Ministry of Defense approves every contract. And it continues to happen, and not only in Mexico, everywhere, in authoritarian countries, in democracies, in flawed democracies, everywhere. It's a totally it's a total mess, this industry, and it's totally unaccountable. But well, we probably will have more opportunities to tell you more things about how NSO Group, how the Israeli government, and how this industry in general have created obstacles for justice, even when we have found the abuse.
Thanks, Luis. Yeah, obviously, because there is impunity, they are not like they keep developing such kind of surveillance technologies and using that against political opponents, activists, and journalists, among others. So I'll go back again to Raed, and Raed, I have a question for you. How can you describe the opportunities of working on disturbing surveillance technologies together with other big, or with other big coalition alongside Citizen Lab, Frontline Defenders, with other organizations? Does that make your mission easier, or it make more challenges because the surveillance technologies companies, they feel you are stronger, so they have to fight back in a much more tough way?
Yeah, so just to reiterate what Luis Fernando just said, and also Ale, on the point that we continue to to uncover more and more abuses of this industry. And actually, I think the more we are, the more researchers are in there, the more like technologists, also people who really know about technology, who really know how to investigate these and how to analyze like phones and find new traces. Because like if we find like traces and publish them, like we need to find also the new traces, because this kind of technology evolves and this kind of technology evades detection and is by nature designed to evade detection. So the more we are, the better it is, I think. And also the more abuses we uncover, the more the more in the spotlight we put this industry that's completely unaccountable and that's completely unregulated, and which is one of the main issues here, and which is one of the main topics that we at Amnesty are pushing for in terms of advocacy. Because like it's good to do research, it's good to uncover like these cases, but what's the solution here? How? Because NSO Group is only one actor in this field, and there are many other actors. Many of them are from Israel, but also from other countries. And abuses do not only concern countries with repressive regimes, as we have seen it like being used in Spain, for example, in Poland, and in many other countries, and which raises also the question of how to regulate this business. And it is not a solution that only comes from one angle or from one side. It's like the regulatory framework needs to take into account many aspects. So solutions are not only technical, it's multi-effort like task and that all of us are into. And also like the solution in like the legal solution that we are seeking does not only apply to the fact that, for example, okay, you sell it to this government and you need to just make sure that this government uses it really well. No, it does not stop like that, and this is not a solution, because even in countries where we have like due diligence and separation between powers and all, and in order to use like, for example, this kind of technology, you need a judicial decision, and you need it to be limited in time, limited in scope, and all of that. But these are not enough guarantees. We need actually. So our position at Amnesty is to, before coming up with this solution to this huge problem, let's just hit the pause button. Let's just like stop all export, transfer and use of this targeted surveillance technology, because actually what we don't know exceeds what we know about this. And what we have been doing and what we have been researching, us and other organizations, only shows the tip of the iceberg of this big problem, which in certain cases can even like threaten the exercise of the basic rights of citizen, and also can threaten even some concepts of justice and democracy in the society. Because if this technology falls into the wrong hands, for example, in certain cases that we investigated at our level, we saw that in Morocco, for example, there was a lawyer defending Hirak al-Rif detainees who was listened on using Pegasus while he was defending like demonstrators against the state of Morocco. So what kind of how fair is this? Like when all of your defense strategy is being listened to. So when you listen to lawyers like this puts into question like the concept of justice. And when you listen to your political opponents, like this also puts into question other aspects of our life in society. So yes, I think that the more we are into this space, the better it is, because we can highlight that this problem does not only concern repressive regimes, or it's not like a problem that's only concerning, for example, like threatening journalists or human rights defenders or politicians. Or no, this is a problem that's far larger than this, and that's why like we are pushing at our side for this moratorium. Let's just stop all export, use, and transfer. And then let's all think about this regulatory framework that can make this technology safe to use in the future, let's say, or maybe we will find like other conclusion that this technology actually needs far more, let's say, breaks to stop all of these abuses. Like let's just stop and then find solution, discuss it, not only at the level of the countries that buy these products or at the level of the countries that sell these products, but also on the international level. And that's what we advocate for in Amnesty. And we've seen, for example, like the European Parliament creating a committee of inquiry after seeing that European country members of the European Union were abusing this kind of technology. So we're seeing like some kind of advances in terms of the regulatory framework, but we still need it to be like on a global scale, let's say, and not only at the level of the Europe or at the level of Israel only, or even at the level of the countries who need to to tighten their laws to be able to use this technology in a way that respects human rights and respects the freedoms of its citizens.
Thanks, Raed. Yeah, definitely. We have like to rethink the use of surveillance technologies, whether we want to use it with laws or where we are going today. I think I'll keep this to my last question, where we are going like in the future, near future, and also like for the long term. But now I'm moving back again to you, Ala, and through your work on the cases that you have been following up on, what challenges and opportunities have you been to? Like, you are living there and inside, like you are a Palestinian citizen of Israel and you are living there. So basically you might face extra challenges, but also on the other hand, you may have like access to specific, I won't say opportunities, but specific things that could make it easier for you because you understand their law. So how can you describe that? Ala, you are muted again.
برأيي التحدي الأكبر بهاي المواضيع هو إنه توصلي العالم للمرحلة اللي وصلها اليوم، واللي هي الرغبة اللي حكاها رائد، اللي هي اليوم صارت يعني معرفة للجميع، إنه إحنا نطالب بوقف هاي الاندستري كلها، بوقف هاي الصناعة، ومنع تام وشامل لبيع هذه الصناعة، على الأقل حتى يتم تحميل المسؤولية للمسؤولين نتيجة الخروقات الجسيمة لحقوق الإنسان التي حدثت، إن كان في المكسيك ودول غربية ودول ديمقراطية ودول لاتينية ودول عربية، وبالإضافة إلى ذلك تحميل المسؤولية لهذه الشركات نتيجة هذه الخروقات. وأيضا طالبنا، ويعني الطلب الأساسي والمنطقي هو أيضا إنه يتم تنظيم regulated، يعني إنه نعمل regulation لكل هذا الموضوع، وما يضل موضوع إنه هو ما فيه ولا أي قانون ولا فيه أي رقابة. ولكن يعني السؤال إنه اليوم إحنا صار كلنا شايفين إنه هاي هي الرغبة وإنه هذا اللي بدنا إياه، في طريقة يعني في صيرورة مركناها لحد ما وصلنا لهاي المرحلة. يعني إحنا باك بال2018 لما ما حدا كان يسمع عن سباي واي تكنولوجي اسمها بيغاسوس، وما حدا كان يعرف الNSO ما كانش عندهم حتى موقع إنترنت، يعني كانوا يشتغلوا بملايين الدولارات أو حتى عشرات ملايين الدولارات مقابل كل صفقة بدون ما يكون عندهم موقع إنترنت. يعني أحد الصعوبات الكبيرة التي واجهناها كيف نوصل العالم يوصل لمرحلة زي ما بحكيها رائد اليوم، إنه إحنا ما بدنا كل هاي التكنولوجي، وإنه هذا الموضوع لازم يتوقف، ومش لازم دولة معينة وإنما بكل العالم. يعني هذا استنتاج يعني أخذوا 3-4 سنين تا العالم وصلوا، وتا اليوم المؤسسات بالأمم المتحدة بتنادي فيه. فالسؤال كان التحدي الكبير بالنسبة لنا منى، كيف بدنا نوصل لهي المرحلة؟ وبرأيي البداية اللي إحنا اخترناها طبعاً زي ما ذكرت عن طريق المدعين من المكسيك، إنك أنت تجيب قضية عن طريق ضحايا مباشرين لهذه السياسة ولهذه التكنولوجيا ولهذا الاستعمال، وإنك أنت تحاول تهاجم هاي الشركة من خلال إنه أول ليفل من الهجوم هو أنت تقول إنه مجرد اختراع هاي التقنية هو كان غير قانوني، وبالإضافة إلى ذلك بيعها بدون رقابة هو غير قانوني، وبالإضافة إلى ذلك بيعها لدول لا تحترم حقوق الإنسان هو غير قانوني. وأيضا ادعاء آخر أنه إذا استمريت في البيع لدول ثبت أنها لا تحترم حقوق الإنسان وأنها تستعمل هذه التكنولوجيا من أجل خرق حقوق الإنسان هو غير قانوني أيضا. فبالتالي هذه سيرورة، يعني سهل جدا اليوم نوصل لنتائج يعني ويشز ونقول إنه إحنا بدنا هيك وبدنا هيك. الأهم كان إنه السيرورة إنك توصل العالم تيوصلوا لهي النتيجة. فعن طريق إنك تجيب قضية عينية تبرز فيها مدى خروقات حقوق الإنسان التي حدثت، تسلط فيها الضوء على هاي التكنولوجيا، وتسلط فيها الضوء على مدى عدم وجود أي رقابة، وتسلط الضوء على عدم وجود أي ريجوليشنز، أي قوانين تحكم هذه المادة. من خلال هذه الاستراتيجية استطعنا نوصل اليوم لمحل إنه بالأمم المتحدة والمنظمات الدولية بينادوا إلى وقف هذه التكنولوجيا على أساس إنها سببت 1 2 3 4 على مدار السنوات الفائتة. يعني بالإضافة للنداءات العامة، تحصيل حق الضحايا وتقديم الدعاوى ضد هذه الشركات هي مرحلة مهمة جدا للوصول إلى هذه النتيجة. التحدي الأكبر كان إنك زي ما حكى لويس إنه الشركات هاي دايما ما تدعي أنها يعني كل التكنولوجيا تخدم حماية الإنسان وحياة الإنسان من خلال مواجهة العنف ومواجهة الإرهاب ودون ذلك. وحتى اليوم ما زالوا يدعون هذه الادعاءات رغم أن جميع الضحايا دون أي شاذ عن القاعدة هم مدنيين وهم أبرياء وهم يعني ناس من المجتمع المدني. فالتحدي الأكبر كان أنك أنت تفرجي العالم من خلال القضايا أن هذا الادعاء ليس صحيحا، أن هذا الادعاء غير صحيح بتاتا. أنت يعني جبت ناس اللي هن أكاديميين، جبت ناس اللي هن محاميين، وأنت حكيت كيف يمكن ادعاء أن هؤلاء هم يعني إرهابيين، كيف يمكن الادعاء أن هؤلاء هم مجرمين. يعني وين وجه الإجرام بالمدعين المكسيكيين اللي هن حقوق يعني صحفيين ونشطاء حقوق إنسان ومعارضين سياسيين وناس تحمل قضية معينة إن كان سياسية وإن كان مدنية. فبالتالي ما تم عمله من خلال هذه القضايا ولحقنا قضايا عديدة طبعا كما ذكرت هو أنه تظهر للعالم مرة أخرى أن الادعاءات التي تثير هذه الشركات هي ادعاءات يعني أنه كاذبة جملة وتفصيلا، وهي تشبه بالأساس ما تدعيه المؤسسة العسكرية الإسرائيلية طبعا منذ 48 لليوم بما يتعلق إن كان بالتعقب غير القانوني أو التجسس، وإن كان بسياسات أخرى، وإن كان بالتعامل حتى كما تعاملت مع الصحفية شيرين أبو عاقلة، الشهيدة شيرين أبو عاقلة في الأسبوع الأخير. هذا الأمر يعني إذا أنت بدك تحكي فقط بالمستوى النهائي والشعارات أنت مش ممكن تثبته أمام العالم. عندما تحضر هؤلاء الضحايا وتعطي الإثباتات من خلال المحكمة ومن خلال الوقائع، أنت تأخذ القضية إلى مرحلة أخرى، وأنت تبدأ بالتأسيس إلى مرحلة كل المؤسسات حتى أمنستي، يعني أمنستي انضمت في مرحلة متأخرة على فكرة يعني للمؤسسات التي كانت بدأت يعني إنه تبحث موضوع إثبات هذه التقنية. يعني العمل سيتيزن لاب بلش قبل عام 2015 بيغاسوس بروجكت، يعني ما يعني انه كمان شهر بيصير له سنه بس.
ان تاتي يعني متاخرا خيرا لا تاتي ابدا
100%. لا هذا جيد جدا وهذا ممتاز، ولكن هذا يثبت السيروره التي قمنا بها انها كانت على حق وانها وصلت النتيجه طبعا المجدي اللي انت سالت عنها. اليوم لما كل المقرين العامين في مؤسسات حقوق الانسان بدعوا الى وقف يعني تو هولد كل هذا البيع، وقفوا تماما، هذا يثبت طبعا مرة أخرى أن كل السيرورة التي مررنا من خلالها هي كانت سيرورة صحيحة، والتحديات والعقبات التي مرقناها طبعا حتى اليوم هي جسيمة. يعني رائد ذكر أنه التعقب وراء المحامين، يعني بفكر انتشر كمان بالصحف العالمية، يعني أنه من أول من تم التعقب وراءهم هم المحامون الذين يعملون على القضايا التي أحضرت أمام المحاكم. يعني بالإضافة إلى الفريق العمل الذي يعمل معي، كنا أول ضحايا من أجل الاختراق، إن كان طبعا وتم نشر هذا الموضوع مفصلا في الصحافة العالمية. فبالإضافة إلى ذلك يوجد أيضا حيثيات هنا صغيرة، يعني نتحدث عن إنك بدك تحضري قضايا كبيرة جدا الى المحاكم، وانت هون بهاي الحاله كمان تحضريها للمحاكم الاسرائيليه. المحاكم الاسرائيليه كما ذكرتي، يعني انا اعرف القانون واعرف ايضا التوجهات بالاضافه الى ذلك. يعني التكنولوجيا في اسرائيل والهايتك في اسرائيل هو دره التاج بالنسبه لهي الدول، يعني هذا المنتج القومي بالنسبه لهم. فانت حتى لو بتحكي على تكنولوجيا اللي هي بتسبب مآسي وسببت قتل كما حدث مع الصحفي الراحل جمال خاشقجي من خلال اختراق هاتفه واختراق هاتف عمر عبد العزيز الذي اقوم بتمثيله وهو معارض سعودي في دعوه اخرى امام المحاكم الاسرائيليه، يعني انه هذا الشيء انه بالضبط هو تماما يعني انه الاثبات ان كل هاي التقنيه يجب وقفها حالا، ويجب يعني وضع قوانين واضحة كيف يتم استعمالها، لمن يتم بيعها، إذا من الأصل يمكن بالسماح بيع هذه التقنية. يعني أحد الأسئلة الأساسية اللي مرات بنمرق عليها، هل مسموح قانونيا أنك أنت تيجي تخترع هيك تكنولوجيا؟ إذا أنت التكنولوجيا من البداية هي معدة لخروقات حقوق الإنسان، هل مسموح أنك أنت تيجي تخترعها أو تيجي تسوقها بالإضافة إلى ذلك؟ فهاي أسئلة وأسئلة أخرى، تحديات مثل طبعا أنه بتحكي عن شركات كبيرة جدا مع موارد يعني لا نهائية، ومقابل نشطاء في مجال حقوق الإنسان مواردهم دائما محدودة. طبعا أنا سعيد جدا أنه مؤسسات أصبحت تعطي الدعم التقني بالنسبة للإثبات كيف حدث هذا الاختراق وأين حدث هذا الاختراق والطريقة التي حدث فيها. يعني إحنا ما زلنا في هذه التجربة، لذلك يعني التحديات كمان ما خلصت وما تكملت، ولكن أحد الأمور المهمة طبعا هو عملية إثبات الاختراق. كيف أنت يعني إنك تقول إنه هذا الاختراق الذي حدث لهؤلاء الناس تم عن طريق بيغاسوس مثلا، ولم يتم عن طريق شركات أخرى، ولم يتم عن طريق دول أخرى. فبالتالي هذه إحدى التحديات طبعا اللي ممكن كمان نواجهها في المراحل المتقدمة من المحكمة.
Thanks, Ala. Like, obviously, there are many challenges that you are facing. And for Amnesty and others, like Yatikum Al-Afia, that's a lot of work. We highly appreciate working on this. And it doesn't matter when you started, the matter is, like, this is accumulated work, as I said from before, and like really, your efforts is highly appreciated and is really needed in such case where the Israeli government or the Israeli regime is profiting from the occupation after testing that on us. So basically, that's really helpful when all this big tech company or big human rights organizations are putting efforts, investing money and resources in such projects, because it's really important to work more on this. Luis, I move again to ask you, can you share with us from a Latin America perspective or Mexican perspective, what restrictions and challenges you are facing in your work against surveillance technologies, and what successes and opportunities have you seen along these years?
Sure, thank you. Well, I guess as some have already hinted, the first obstacle is that it's very difficult to prevent these tools from being abused. No, from the way they are designed and the way they work. It's very difficult to stop abuse from happening, because you just give a lot of power to a person or institution that has no accountability, and that mainly guarantees you that that tool is going to be abused. But then the main challenge is, how do you detect the abuse? And we might feel complacent because we have been able to find so many cases around the world, but as was mentioned before, I think we really know the tip of the iceberg, and that's a really big problem. It's a really big problem that these tools are designed to be very difficult to detect when abuse happens. But even when you detect abuse, as we have shown in Mexico, in which there's been an ongoing investigation for 5 years without any meaningful results, even when you you can prove that human rights defenders, journalists, opposition activists have been targeted with Pegasus, for example, there's still many hurdles in the way, and I want to highlight one that is really important, which is the how NSO Group or even the Israeli government operate. And just to give you a really precise example, one of the agencies that we have been able to prove that acquired Pegasus licenses in Mexico was headed by this guy called Tomás Herón. And he not only purchased this Pegasus license, he also was involved in the 483 students disappeared investigation. He committed torture. He manipulated evidence. He has charges on corruption. When the previous government of Mexico finished, he fled. And where do you think he fled? He fled to Israel. He's hiding in Israel, and the Israeli government is apparently not collaborating, not cooperating in the extradition of this person. The same with NSO Group. NSO Group has claimed in the media many times that they have due diligence and they do these internal investigations, and that the clients need to give them the audit logs to see if there's been abuse. That when they have found abuse, they cancel contracts and licenses. In 5 years, NSO Group has not shared any information, has not answered to any questions, and has not collaborated with the Mexican investigation into the abuses with their tools at all. So these institutions are not being accountable, are not being responsible actors in international arena. The Israeli government, the Ministry of Defense, supposedly they authorize any licenses that are sold by these companies. But we have found how, for example, NSO Group has sold these tools to agencies that don't even have legal powers in Mexico to do surveillance. So this is the primary or one of the main obstacles that we have found, the lack of cooperation by Israel and by the NSO Group into the investigation. But there's been successes, and there's been, I think, the sole fact that we have been able around the world, through a lot of work, through a lot of collaboration, maybe a bit of luck, we have been able to document so many cases to bring this abuse into the light, has created great opportunities, I think unique opportunities that are not going to last forever, and that we need to we need to seize those opportunities to be able to rein in this industry and this environment of surveillance that right now we have documented high political figures, journalists, human rights defenders, but that we know that the intention of these companies and some governments is to deploy this surveillance into the lives of everyone, as we have sadly know that happens in Palestine. So there's been some successes. I think that the fact that, for example, these big tech companies like Facebook and Apple are suing NSO Group in the US changes the correlation of forces, that some governments are starting to do investigations, put sanctions into NSO Group, although NSO Group is not a bad apple. This is the system that we need to change. Nothing is solved if NSO Group disappears or it's not a problem of NSO Group, it's a problem of the surveillance industry. And there's many things that we need to think about how to regulate this from the export side. We're working a lot in Mexico on how we can put rules in Mexico to stop buying tools from countries that do not give those guarantees that they will cooperate with investigations, for example. That we won't buy equipment from companies who sell to authoritarian regimes who are not accountable when their tools are abused by their clients. So there's a lot of things that we can do in many spaces, international and national, to try to seize this opportunity that comes from the scandal and from all this attention that we have been able to bring into the issue, to try to stop this from becoming the normalcy of everyday people, which I think would be the death of liberty, of democracy, and of the aspirations of well-meaning people.
Thanks, Luis. That's really helpful to understand how's it going there. Now, I have a question for the three of you. So maybe I can ask the question and then we can hear briefly, guys, because we still have one question and we have questions in the chat box, but we don't have a lot of time. So my question is, we have heard recently how your work and campaigns affecting and annoying the company, and some said it stopped Pegasus. But we all know that surveillance state is not only Pegasus. They might have other spywares and malwares, because they are producers. So obviously they have also other kinds of technologies, CCTV cameras and others. So what do you want to say in this regard? Like, if Beyghassos is done, what can you say in this regard? Right, do you want to start?
Yes,
please,
sure. Yes. So just about this. So the problem is not only NSO Group and Pegasus. And just to set things straight, like in 2012, a group of journalists in Morocco were attacked by RCS, which is a spyware manufactured by Hacking Team, an Italian company. So this problem has been like around for a long time now. And then like there are multiple approaches to this. So in order for lawyers to be able to present cases and with real evidence, like they need to have real evidence. And real evidence, where does it come from? It comes from technical evidence that you need to analyze, like the phones. And just to stress what Ale has been saying about the importance of the process and the importance of accumulating like these experiences throughout the years to reach the point where we're able to push the UN, the European Parliament, and the European Union and other like bodies to implement like this regulatory framework that we're pushing for. Like we need like an effort coming from all sides. And one of the main sides that we at Amnesty has been like putting effort in is the technical side of things, because you cannot go as Ale said, you cannot like go to a court of law and say, yeah, I've been targeted by Pegasus without having like any evidence. And then the first question will be, how are you sure that this is Pegasus and this is NSO Group? And actually we've been doing like at our level, we've been focusing mainly on this. And we feel and we strongly believe that there is a need to have more technical people subscribing to the fight and making allies out of people who are into the technical side of things and not only like look at it from one angle. And that's an important fact, because one of the main sources for us, for example, that we relied on were the analysis that of the only sample that's out there of Pegasus that was made public. It was made public in 2016 by the Lookout, a company called Lookout that does forensics, that does forensic analysis. And their analysis has been really tremendous into advancing the cause and advancing like the technological knowledge that we have about the product. And without that, I think that we cannot push further the battle. And we really need like IT professionals to subscribe also to this. We need also, for example, like these spyware, they are manufactured by people who are also like tech professionals in many countries. And sometimes like many of them don't even know that the code that they are developing is actually contributing to killing people. And that's one of the things also that we need to think about. And we need to advocate about, is that like integrating in that's the fact that innovation is not neutral, innovation is not unqualified, and the code in itself is not neutral. So yes, from our side at Amnesty, we've been focusing on the technical side of things, and we think that's one of the main issues, and that's one of the main pillars of pushing forward the battle.
Thanks, Raed. Ala, in 2 minutes or less, maybe, please.
2 minutes. I'm muted? No.
No,
okay.
we can hear you.
Yeah. أنا بستبعد إنه البيغاسوس يعني مش بعدش موجود، وبستبعد كمان إنه توقف استعماله. يمكن إنه الشركات اليوم تتوخى الحذر أكثر، وخاصة مع وجود مؤسسات اللي هي بتحاول تفحص وتكشف من خلال تقارير مهمة طبعا بتصدرها عن هذا الموضوع. ويعني بما أني كمان بتابع القضايا الموجودة هون، وأنا شايف كمان موقف الدولي من هذه القضايا، فبقدر أضيف كمان إنه ما زالت هذه الشركات الNSO جروب تحظى بدعم سياسي وأمني من المؤسسة الإسرائيلية. فلذلك أنا بعتقدش إنهم وقفوا. ممكن إنه العالم صار أكثر حذر، ممكن إنه الحكومات صارت تتعامل مع المواضيع بطريقة أخرى، وبنرجع كمان مرة للموضوع الأساسي، إنه القصة أو الواقع اللي بنعيشه واللي إحنا طبعا بصدده بهاي الجلسة هو ليس شركة الNSO وليس الشركات الإسرائيلية على وجه التحديد، إنما كل الموضوع تبع التجسس من خلال هذه التقنيات أو تقنيات مشابهة. فبالتالي وقف بيغاسوس هو لا يعني وقف هذه الظاهرة أو وقف هذا الواقع، إنما يمكن طبعا اختزاله على لاعب مركزي واحد، ولكن الظاهرة ما زالت موجودة والاستعمال والممارسات ما زالت موجودة. ف برأيي يعني هي ليست تفاحة فاسدة يعني فقط إذا أخرجناها من اللعبة أو من الموازنة فالموضوع انحل. ما زال الموضوع بده تكاثف جهود، وما زال الموضوع بده تكاثف جميع، إن كان قانوني وإن كان تقني طبعا، والمؤسسات المجتمع المدني، ومن ضمنها طبعا المنتدى فلسطين واللي بيثير هذه القضايا طبعا بمهنية رائعة.
Thank you, Ala. As you are speaking about like the next steps, I'll jump to the next question, and I'll start with you, Louise, in this question. So just to save our time, we have the last 5 minutes. And Louise, if you can also briefly answer us, where are we going today, and what are our next steps to make sure that we can protect our communities, and primarily, how can we as South-to-South people, movements, and organizations work to stop the regimes and tech companies from using such surveillance or surveillance capitalism to profit from that? Luis, the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, it's a really heavy question, but I'll try my best. I think a lot of what we have been doing, we need to keep doing. It's a struggle, as many things, and I don't need to tell Palestinian people about struggle and about the time it takes, no? So we need to keep exposing. I think it's really important to keep exposing things that are meant to be hidden. That's a really, I mean, the most important thing. We cannot discuss, criticize, scrutinize, change things that we cannot see. And these tools are meant to be used to not be seen. So we need to keep exposing and to use any tool, legal tool in our arsenal to try to change this. We need to keep suing them everywhere we can. We need to continue to push for investigations, for there to be accountability, for there to be better regulation. There's no silver bullet. It's a struggle, cultural, political, legal, even economical struggle that we need to keep fighting. And I think solidarity is really important. The solidarity and the networks that we can build inside our own countries and between our countries is essential, because many of these cases were known because of this solidarity, of this collaboration. In our case, we had really great contacts with the human rights movement, with journalists. That's how we were able to get someone to give us their phone to check it to see if they have Pegasus. If there's no trust, if there's no networks, if there's not organization, you cannot detect the cases. And we depended on institutions like Citizen Lab, like Amnesty Tech, to do those technical analysis. I totally agree, we need to bring more technical people into finding this. And then the lawyers, I mean, Allah, without them, we cannot sue in certain jurisdictions. I don't know anything about Israeli law, and I depend on people like them. And we need to continue to collaborate, to continue to have solidarity, and to struggle in all the avenues that we can. Journalists need to keep exposing, lawyers need to keep doing their thing, technical people as well, and continue to fight for what I believe it's totally something that it's an existential threat to humanity in essence.
Thanks a lot, Luis. Raed, do you want to add anything? We still have some time, so you can have like 1.5 minutes. Please go.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I totally agree. Like it's actually multidisciplinary, multi-effort on multiple levels that we need to have, and actually we at Amnesty have are a bit lucky because we are like a big organization that's everywhere in the world. So we have like already established like this kind of trust between like human rights defenders, journalists, and lawyers, and we have our own network, and that's actually eases a little bit like the process, but we still like need to collaborate with everyone else. Like it's not something that that one organization can lead head on. That's big problem. That's universal problem, and we need like to put put our hands together and face it by pushing like on the level of on the technical side, on the law, on the human rights aspects of things, on the political side of things, because like this problem is not apolitical, and we've seen that this industry is really deep into like the political like networks, be it in Israel or also in client countries, and this ties also to many diplomatic like relations. And also my last word would be like let's keep like the solidarity up. Let's all work together in this, and just reiterate what Luis Fernando just said about the fact that we all need to work together to face this problem. And thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot. Ala, if you just have a very quick thing in 30 seconds, I'm so sorry, but like it's really interesting to hear from you all guys. Please go, Ala.
يعني بفكر بالإضافة للي انحكى واللي هو مهم جدا، وإنه هي معركة مستمرة ومتعددة الأوجه. بفكر يجب الاستمرار بملاحقة شخصية لهذه الشركات لتحميل هالمسؤولية. يعني بدون ذلك، بدون إيجاعها في معقلها ودون إيجاعها إنه تحس إنها هي مسؤولة وإنها تحس إنها هي ملاحقة، هي راح تكمل بالممارسات وراح تكمل بنفس التوجهات اللي هي بتعملها لحد الآن. لذلك الاستمرار بهذا العمل هو مهم جدا.
Thanks a lot. Unfortunately, we have reached till the end of our session. It's really like interesting to hear from you all guys from Palestine to Mexico. We all are like here to speak about like anti-surveillance movements and organizations, and we hope that we keep the work up and we keep like standing in solidarity and support each other like within like individuals, movements, or local organizations and international organizations. Thank you all for joining us today to speak about that, and that thanks for the audience who were basically engaging with this fruitful session. Thanks a lot, and stay with us. Back to you, Yasmin.